Imagine, just for a moment, that you're taking part in a game. A game that began long before you ever realized you were playing. The pieces were already set when you arrived, and some of them carry something most of us can't even comprehend. Move patiently, hiding behind polite smiles and perfect masks. They know exactly how you think, what you crave, and what you fear. And more importantly, they feel no remorse for turning you into their tool. This video isn't simply about curiosity or psychology. It's about survival, about learning to see the darkest parts of human nature, and understanding why so often it's these people, the cold, the vain, the calculating, who rise to the top. Today, we're going to expose 3 of the most dangerous profiles you might ever encounter: psychopaths, narcissists, and Machiavellians. I'll show you how their minds operate, how they see the world, and what makes them so irresistibly seductive and so destructive. By the end, you'll discover that the only way not to become another piece on their board is to learn to see what almost no one dares to look at. So take a deep breath, get ready, because what you're about to learn may change how you see everything and everyone around you. Psychopaths, the art of faking emotions. When we hear the word psychopath, it's common to picture a sinister figure with a vacant stare and violent impulses. But reality is much subtler. Most psychopaths don't go around committing visible atrocities. In fact, they often present themselves as perfectly normal, even charming. At first glance, they seem friendly, polite, trustworthy. They know exactly how to mimic empathy. But behind the mask, there's something all psychopaths share: a total absence of guilt, remorse, and genuine emotional connection. They don't feel emotions like we do. They perform them. They can smile, cry, or show concern, but it's all a carefully rehearsed act designed to manipulate their surroundings. A perfect example is Tommy. From the series The Mentalist, Tommy commits murders while pretending to have a mental disability. This performance works because almost no one suspects someone who appears helpless. When people underestimate his intelligence, he gains complete freedom to act unnoticed. Robert Greene describes this tactic in Law. 21 of the 48 laws of power: play the fool to catch the fool. When they believe in your naivety, they lower their guard. But what makes Tommy different from an ordinary manipulator is the coldness with which he sustains this act. This isn't about lying to be accepted. It's about a killer moving among the victims of his own crimes completely undisturbed. Psychopaths, in real life, the inner void. This absence of emotion isn't a screenwriter's exaggeration. In real life, serial killers often show the same chilling apathy. Some remain utterly calm while hearing they'll spend the rest of their lives in prison. To them, the world seems like an irrelevant stage. People often say psychopaths know the price of everything but value nothing. They might say "I love you" with the same flat tone as "pass the salt." Neuroscientific research has revealed something even more disturbing. In moments of fear, tension, or excitement, a typical brain shows a specific pattern of activity. But psychopaths display theta waves, usually associated with deep relaxation and sleep, even when fully awake and taking action. This is why, while most people panic, the psychopath switches into strategic mode. They remain cold and attentive, spotting opportunities no one else can see. That's what makes them such dangerous adversaries. They feel no guilt in harming others. They don't fear consequences. And because they never get emotionally involved, they can manipulate with ease, observing life as if from a distance. Psychopaths in movies. Faces of the void. To visualize this behavior more clearly, think of these unforgettable characters. Anton Chigurh, No Country for Old Men. He doesn't just feel cold, he embodies total emptiness. He decides people's fate with a coin toss, as if human life meant nothing at all. Tom Ripley, the talented Mr. Ripley, a social chameleon. He adapts to any environment, changes personality like changing clothes, and never feels remorse. Frank Abagnale Jr., Catch Me If You Can, the charismatic psychopath who thrives in chaos. He lies effortlessly, seduces with his charm, and never panics, even under pressure. Amy Dunn, Gone Girl, calculating, meticulous, and without scruples. She creates a flawless narrative to frame her husband and eliminates obstacles without hesitation. Joe Goldberg you, perhaps the most disturbing of love. He kills in the name of love and truly believes he's saving his victims. His speeches about protection are just a disguise for obsession and absolute control. Narcissists, the mirror that's never satisfied. You might think narcissism is just vanity or a touch of arrogance, but in reality, it's far more complex. Narcissism is a deeply distorted mental state where a person builds their entire existence around one belief. I am special. The term comes from the legend of Narcissus, the young man who fell in love with his reflection in a pool and died unable to look away. Just like in that story, narcissists are trapped in a constant hunger for admiration. Unlike psychopaths, they don't necessarily want to destroy you at least not deliberately. What they crave is for you to admire them, to validate them, to never question the glorious image they project. This need for applause isn't just about ego. For them, it's almost a form of emotional survival. How narcissism takes root. Many experts believe narcissistic behavior often begins in childhood. Some parents put their kids on a pedestal, praising them excessively. Others do exactly the opposite. They neglect their children's emotional needs. Strangely, both scenarios often create the same outcome, an empty identity, a constant sense that reality itself is unbearable to cope. The narcissist invents an idealized version of themselves, a flawless mask that hides their fragility. Behind it lurks an almost childish fear, the terror of being seen as ordinary, weak, or insignificant. And that fear turns any criticism, however small, into a threat of total collapse. The never-ending theater of superiority. From the outside, a narcissist can look supremely confident, but don't be fooled. They are desperately dependent on recognition. They need an audience clapping every single day to keep their narrative alive. They become hypersensitive to any form of disagreement. They react with disdain, anger, or attempts to humiliate. A narcissist sees themselves as the absolute center of the universe and expects everyone else to agree. They feel entitled to special treatment privileges no one else should dare claim. When reality contradicts this illusion, they react like a spoiled child who just lost their favorite toy. The inability to feel genuine empathy. Unlike the psychopath, who feels nothing at all, a narcissist can experience shallow emotions, but always filtered through self-interest. If your pain reinforces their narrative, like proving they are a misunderstood victim, they might show sympathy. But if your suffering serves no purpose, they simply ignore it. Everything revolves around protecting the fragile image they worship. This is why narcissists often behave in a controlling, arrogant, and childlike way. They are adults stuck in a never-ending performance. Examples of narcissism in movies. To understand this better, let's look at some characters who embody this. Mindset: Patrick Bateman, American Psycho, obsessed with appearance and status. He spends hours perfecting his skin, his hair, and choosing the most expensive suits. His life is a showcase designed to maintain the illusion of perfection. Any threat to that illusion triggers violence and rage. Homelander: The Boys, narcissism taken to its most destructive form. It's not enough for him to be the most powerful. He needs to be worshipped like a god. When devotion fades, he becomes unpredictable and violent. His greatest fear isn't losing power, it's losing adoration. Commodus Gladiator, a classic vulnerable narcissist. Rejected by his father, ignored by the people, he transforms that pain into a blind hunger for control. He needs to humiliate and terrorize others to feel significant. He can't stand the idea of being forgotten. Napoleon Bonaparte, in historical fiction, a brilliant strategist whose ambition bordered on megalomania. He refused to tolerate any challenge to his authority. When his plans failed, he blamed the entire world for not recognizing his greatness. The emptiness that can never be filled. No matter how much success or fame they achieve, narcissists never feel truly satisfied. The emptiness always returns, demanding new applause, new trophies, new followers, and when they don't get the validation they crave, their entire inner castle starts to collapse. That's their greatest weakness, a near childlike dependence on the admiration of others. They need the world to confirm what they secretly doubt themselves, that they are special and untouchable. Machiavellians, when everything is strategy. If psychopaths feel no remorse and narcissists crave adoration. Machiavellians live for a single purpose: power. They don't care who gets hurt, which relationships are sacrificed, or what moral lines are crossed. To them, feelings, ethics, and justice are nothing but distractions. There is only one question: does this help me win? The word Machiavellian comes from Niccolo Machiavelli, whose book The Prince offered a cold-blooded portrait of politics. He argued that to govern effectively, one must abandon morality and do whatever is necessary to stay in power. If you had to lie, threaten, or destroy someone to keep your positions, so be it. After all, as he famously wrote, the ends justify the means. Over time, the concept left the realm of politics and entered psychology as the name for a particular type of person, the one who sees everyone around them as pieces on a chessboard. The cold tactics of the Machiavellian. True Machiavellians have a defining trait that sets them apart. They don't need affection or approval. Unlike psychopaths, who sometimes act on impulse or boredom, Machiavellians are deliberate and patient. They calculate every step with surgical precision, while narcissists can't live without applause. Machiavellians don't care if you admire them or hate them. They only care if you're useful. If you help them consolidate power, they will keep you close. If not, they will discard you without hesitation, like an obsolete tool. High social intelligence. Low morality. Research shows Machiavellians tend to have remarkable social skills. They can quickly detect what you desire, what you fear, and what you doubt. They know how to make you feel seen and important, just long enough to turn your trust into leverage. Their talent for manipulating others comes paired with something even more dangerous, an almost total lack of emotional attachment. They understand how you function. They simply don't care about your well-being. The perfect disguise. One of the biggest risks of dealing with Machiavellians is that they rarely look threatening. Most of the time, they appear pleasant, diplomatic, and dependable. They'll offer help, show patience, and invest in relationships, but every gesture is a calculated move. The scariest part, they don't need to love or hate you to exploit you. They just need to believe you serve their plan. Examples of Machiavellianism in movies. Let's look at a few characters who personify this mentality. Frank Underwood, House of Cards, a brilliant strategist who turns politics into chess. Every word and every smile is rehearsed. He crafts an image of a strong leader who cares about the people. But behind the mask, he is pure ambition. Frank knows that showing real emotion is the ultimate weakness. Gordon Gekko, Wall Street. For him, greed isn't a flaw, it's a virtue. He openly despises anyone who clings to principles. His mantra is simple: if the world belongs to the ruthless, he will be the apex predator. He manipulates markets and destroys rivals like it's all just sport. Vito Corleone, the Godfather, the Machiavellian with elegance. He offers favors that look generous but create unbreakable debts. His greatest power is convincing others that they act by their own choice. Once you're in his web, you never get out. The invisible risk. Ask a Machiavellian how they feel about their allies, and you'll likely see a blank stare. They don't need to feel loyalty or hatred to manipulate. They only need to know that you are functional to their purpose. And perhaps the most dangerous part, while you think you're building a genuine relationship, they're just planning their next move. The dark psychology of success. After everything we've explored, it's hard not to notice an unsettling coincidence. Many of the people who reach the highest levels of power, fame, and influence carry clear traits of the Dark Triad. Some will say it's just random chance, But history and psychology both show that there is a strong connection between this mindset and extreme success. I've talked in other videos about the more optimistic philosophies of success, the speeches about discipline, creativity, and resilience. But it would be naive to pretend those virtues alone build empires. In reality, behind many celebrated biographies, there are hidden aspects we rarely question. Biographies that reveal the dark side. The writer Walter Isaacson, who chronicled the lives of Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, and Leonardo da Vinci, found a striking pattern repeating over and over. He observed that behind the brilliance and the innovation, many of these figures carried deep childhood traumas, conflicted family histories, personalities addicted to control and validation, and often an almost complete absence of empathy. Isaacson described Elon Musk as someone incapable of feeling compassion for the people closest to him. Steve Jobs, meanwhile, was famous for bending reality to his will-creating narratives. So persuasive, even his employees believed them, no matter how untrue. The world doesn't always reward the just. Of course, these traits aren't the only reason they achieved so much. But let's be honest, they helped. Look back through history, and you'll see it clearly. The world doesn't always reward the kindest people. More often, those who rise are the ones who dare to cross boundaries. Studies on leadership have shown that individuals with narcissistic, Machiavellian, and psychopathic traits are more likely to hold positions of high status and power. They can make hard decisions without losing sleep, pull others into grand narratives, and manipulate situations to look like visionaries. The Wolf of Wall Street, a real example. If you want a real-life example, just look at Jordan Belfort. Portrayed in The Wolf of Wall Street, Belfort wasn't fictional. He was a real broker who built a billion-dollar empire by deceiving investors and manipulating the market. His office was practically a circus. Corruption, fraud, lies, shameless excess. Anyone who walked in unprepared was devoured by that environment. While most people would crack under the stress and guilt, Belfort and his closest allies stayed perfectly calm. They could walk out at the end of the day without showing whether they'd lost everything or made another fortune. Why they're so seductive. This mindset doesn't only show up in business, it also thrives in personal relationships. Psychologist Peter Jonassen conducted a revealing study. Men with strong Dark Triad traits tend to have more sexual partners. They prefer short, transactional relationships. They have little interest in emotional depth or true connection. In other words, they're extremely seductive at first. They come across as confident, magnetic, and exciting. But over time, they reveal an inability to maintain any genuine bond. How to turn the game against them. The wisest strategy when you cross paths with someone like this is simple: walk away. But sometimes that's not an option. You might have to work with them, deal with them in your family, or face them in important projects. In those moments, recognizing them isn't enough. You have to learn how to turn the game around. The secret is to watch carefully and understand what they emotionally depend on, what patterns they repeat, where their weak spots are hiding. The weaknesses of each profile. Each trait has its own vulnerabilities. Psychopaths, they are impulsive and easily bored. They need constant stimulation. They grow reckless when the environment feels predictable. Narcissists, they are prisoners of their own ego. Nothing destroys them faster than public humiliation or the collapse of their perfect image. Machiavellians, they are blinded by their obsession with strategy. Their greatest flaw is overconfidence, believing no one can outsmart them. But there's something all of them share. They refuse to look inward. They may read everyone else with precision, but they will never confront their own emptiness. That's their greatest weakness. Hans Landa, pride turned to shame. To see how this downfall works, remember Hans Landa from Inglourious Basterds. He embodies the entire Dark Triad, a cold-blooded psychopath, a narcissist obsessed with status, a Machiavellian master of manipulation. When he realizes the Nazi regime is collapsing, he tries to bargain for his own survival. He hands over secret information and demands immunity. He pictures himself living comfortably in America, claiming credit as the hero who betrayed the Nazis. But in the moment, he thinks he's won. Aldo Rain and his men reveal their final move. They don't kill him. Instead, they carve a swastika into his forehead. With that, they strip away everything he valued most: his reputation, his ability to reinvent himself, the image he presented to the world. He would spend the rest of his life branded with the truth he tried to hide. The Law of Power. Hans Landa became a victim of Law 15 from Robert Greene. Crush your enemy totally. When you face someone like this, you can't hesitate. They don't feel guilt. They don't forget. They won't stop until they regain control. If you don't neutralize them fully, they will find a way to strike back. When you deal with people from the Dark Triad, there are no half measures. You either dismantle them completely, or sooner or later, you become their next target. You made it this far. That means now you understand the traits that define the Dark Triad. Psychopaths who feel nothing, narcissists who live only to be worshipped, Machiavellians who turn every relationship into a power game. You might be wondering whether all of this sounds exaggerated. But the truth is, many of the people we admire, leaders, entrepreneurs, icons, carry these marks at their core. The world doesn't always reward the most empathetic. It doesn't always recognize the most just. More often, those who climb the highest are the ones who are willing to cross the line. But that doesn't mean you have to live in constant suspicion. It only means that Navit comes at a high price. And pretending that darkness doesn't exist doesn't make it go away. If there's one lesson here, it's that real power isn't just about understanding others. It's about having the courage to look inside yourself, to acknowledge your own shadows, to decide consciously who you want to be in this game. Because in the end, there are only two kinds of people: those who live their lives being manipulated and those who learn to play. If this video resonated with you, share it with someone who also needs to open their eyes. Subscribe, because together we'll keep uncovering the mind and everything it tries to hide. Thank you for watching until the end. And remember, knowledge is the one weapon no one can ever take away from you.